This is a LabVIEW Beginner lesson where we make a heart rate monitor. This is lesson 5 where we make a full-fledged application. In this lesson, we'll be creating an exe file, an executable, and then we will make an installer. The executable will need the runtime engine, which is what makes LabVIEW work. This is similar to what we had before with Java, the Java thing, and the same with to run any Python script, you will need Python, etc. And the same is with LabVIEW. We will also be making an installer. The difference between the executable and the installer is that the executable works if you have the LabVIEW or the LabVIEW runtime engine installed, while the installer will install the LabVIEW runtime engine for you so that the application you make can work on any PC. We can start in the project. To make an executable, you go to Build Specifications and create an application, exe. The only thing you really need to do is to select what you want to launch. We want our launcher. And we don't have any fancy dependencies, so technically you're done now. You can OK or build, whatever, and you can get your executable. I'll do a little bit more just to go through the basics. Here you will select the name. This will be important for the installer and also for some meta information. So it's nice to have these properly. To show how they will appear on your PC after installing and in the exe file, I will just copy the controller here's name. So for this one, it will be build specific name. And then I'll just add an AA at the end just to see that it's something different. So it's just not something random. Target file name, AA. And here is a directory. Usually it just goes in the same folder as you have your project, but you can choose this yourself. Source file, here we were in. Here you just choose which VI this should start. And the always include is if you have some sort of dependencies that doesn't always get included. For example, an ini file or some other file which isn't obvious for LabVIEW to bring with. We don't have this. Destination. So this is the same as the other one. It's just here you can select the destination more accurately. You can say that you can tell where this goes. So you tell where startup VIs goes, and you tell where supportive directory. You can also add more directories depending on your needs, so you can have multiple directories around your exe file, which will also be copied for your installer. Here, so more detailed settings around each VI. You can have password protected, you can have certain settings if you want. This can easily be ignored. Here we can make an icon. So we want an icon. We can take 32 by 32 or something. Here, let's just make an icon. Let's just have a simple smiley face. Take a border around it. This is just an example because me wasting time here making a fancy icon would just be a waste of time. So we'll go into the where we have everything else and we can just say call it docs or something like. Anyway, random things. And then we'll say icon. It's saved. And now we can select the icon. Add docs. And then we'll just select this one. So I think you could select both of them depending on the PC and it can automatically choose one, but we won't go into this. Here, also some extra settings. It's best to let everything be default. Here with the enable debugging, you will make a larger file, but if you sometimes have an error with more complicated versions, you can add it here. Version information. So here you can add whatever. This is also quite important. So here we see the build specification again, product name. So I'll just add also product name here. And legal rights, well, this is probably fine enough. Company, we'll just have a company name. Build specification and description, and here we can just have description. We'll see this later. This isn't so important for the exe, but when you make the installer, these things can do a lot. These other things here, not very important. You can have pre and post build actions, for example, that you, after you've built it, you move the file, etc. This could be very useful for bigger operations, but for what we're doing now, the only thing you really have to care about is this one. The rest is not very essential. So there we have. Let's just save the project and then press build. And it's done. So we can either explore and then find it here. So to run it, you just press here. We select what we want, my deck, etc. It runs. We still have this in the background. We could hide it, but it doesn't matter now. And you see when you stop it, it will still stick around. There's ways to hide it, move it behind. I don't think I want to close it after finishing because we might get some errors which are useful to read. But what we can do is to hide it. But before that, I also want to show you that you can just right click here and press run, and it will run all the same. And we can stop it. Now, something I've forgotten. It should stop properly when I press the X. So the thing I have forgotten to add in the GUI is, so what we want to do is to add another stop event. We'll just duplicate this event, choose this VI, panel close, question marks, and we can replay. We don't need to have this one. We can instead just, because if you close it, you want it to close. And now, if you try to run it now, we can see the whole application stops when you do that. What we also want to add is a way to hide this one while it's running. So we could have something along the line where it, at this point here, hides itself. So to hide it and to show it again when it's done, we will have to have a property node. Property node. And we need a reference to this VI, so then I'll just take this VI, this VI. There are other ways to get the reference, but I think this is the quickest one and will work for smaller applications at least, or probably most people will ever make. But if you have a giant application, they would be worth researching a better way. So and then we go to property. So here you can see you have a lot of options. There's a lot you can do here. But what we want is the state. And we want to not read the state, we want to write the state. We also want it to happen after the init. And what we want after the init is for not to have a control, but create a constant. We want it to be hidden. And then to make it, and we want it to be visible again after it has ran. Okay, so let's try this one now. Play this one, and then it's hidden. So it's not technically hidden when we run it from here, because then we already opened it. But when we run it from this guy, we'll see that it's hidden. And when we stop it, it's back again and we get our errors. We could do more and to actually add more property nodes, which closes it properly. And if you just continue on lines I showed you, you could do that. But for me, I think getting the errors here might be useful at the stage most people are now. Okay, so now we have got it to open properly. We remove the background, the launcher, which we don't need while it's running. The next thing we could do is to create an installer. And that's just as easy. We go into build specification, new installer. And here we can take a new one again, build specific name, and then I'll add BB because this is the installer setting, and then production name or product name. That's a nice name, but I like my way of just product name BB. An installer name, we can just have installer name BB. And here we choose where it should go. Should it go into program files? There's a lot of folders you have to select. So for here, I'll add heart rate monitor, but I'll add a BB again, just to indicate where the name, and I'll just say destination, just so it's clear. And source file, so here is the important part. Here is where we choose our executable and we say it should go in here, because maybe you have a more complicated program, you want some into like a doc file, someone into temp, someone into system, then you would kind of allocate them here. Luckily we have it easy, so we just put everything into the folder we created. And with everything I just mean the executable. Source file settings could make things difficult, but we don't need to. We could make a shortcut, and then we can just call it shortcut. And we could say where we want it programmed. We could have it on the desktop, wherever. This is up to you. And then there's additional things, like you could have auto configuration of things from Macs, etc. Company name again, then we'll just company name BB, and we could add a website. You could, for example, have .ntnu.no, and yeah, company to contact, yeah, etc. You can add more information up, and there's other things, but for all intents and purposes, basically you could leave this at default. You only need to select this one. This is the only thing you really have to do. The rest is optional. Okay, so we're done here. And let's build. This takes a little time because it also includes the runtime engine. And while we wait for that, I'll just show you. So in this option, you see an icon, very nice icon, and we see the description here. We also can see details here. We can see a lot more of the details we added in here. So if you wanted to add details, add your name, etc., this is the place where you want to add it. The runtime engine is what powers LabVIEW. It's what makes things run, quickly said. So it's essential, just like having Java, having the old Java when you ran Java, etc. And most things you run on your PC, you need some sort of engine to run. In the installer, it's included. That's why we will see that it has a hefty size. So this one is 540, while this one, or we can go to the folder, is just 540 kilobytes. So the difference is enormous. This is because this includes the runtime engine, which is quite big. So this is a fixed size. So if this exe took let's say 1 gigabyte, then it will be 1.5 gigabyte. This is a fixed offset because of all the added work here. But the installer is not needed when you have LabVIEW installed. The installer also takes less space when you install it than installing LabVIEW, so it's nice when you have a different PC. To install it, you just double click here. You will get the normal install windows. Yeah, it will tell you where you want. It can tell you where other stuff should go. But we don't need to. Now it's installed. Since I already have LabVIEW Runtime Engine 2020, it doesn't install it because it says you already have it. So using the installer is up to you. And now we see here, target file name, and that's opposite. We launch with the simulator, for example, it goes. And then we see our precious little icon here with our smiley face. And that's how you make an installer. You see, when I try to start again before I close this one, it won't start because it's already running. So if you're opening and closing it a lot, this might be annoying. But let's open it again now. And let's select actually the hardware, my DAC. Let's see how our nice newly made installer works. And we see it works. It's still the same difficulty with the lighting. And when I talk at the same time, it's really difficult to keep my fingers still. I have around 16 pulse, so this is pretty accurate. You can measure it with you see immediately when I start talking, it runs the result. So you can also double check this with the pulse clock. You could easily replace the hardware with some more complicated way of measuring the pulse and get a better result. And you could reuse all of the filtering, the GUI, etc. because we have separated into 3 pieces. And this is the advantage with having a proper architecture. And that's it for this lesson. This might be the final lesson, but I also might make one for adding Arduino or adding special features. Please request them if you want them. I'm not really sure what people would like to see more of, what they're confused about. Just ask questions and ask for whatever you would like to see next, and I'll see what I can do about making it.